And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending upon where you're joining us from around the globe. This is Robert Leek, Director of Marketing here at eFolder, and I would like to welcome you to the most recent edition of MSP Ignition. We have an exciting program for you today. We're going to be focusing on igniting sales within your business and really giving you MSP owners, the folks working in the IT channel, some things to keep in mind as it relates to how to grow your business and how to find those opportunities and really how to capitalize on them when they present to you. Again, I'm Robert. That's me on the far right. I'm joined today by Tom Watson, our host of MSP Ignition for all episodes. Tom, welcome. How you doing today?
Thanks, Robert. I'm doing well. Looking forward to this. This is one of the things I'm really passionate about in business is how do you get new business and how do you do it effectively?
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. And also, for the first time on this show, we have Scott Kaplan from K1. Really excited to have Scott with us today. We'll dive into a little bit, but Scott, can you give us a tidbit about you?
Sure. Hello, everyone. So I've been a sales guy for 20 plus years. As you can probably tell my picture, got a lot of grays. And I've done everything in and around sales, from carrying the bag in multiple different types of arenas, selling different types of technology over the course of 20-something years. As well as sales leadership and sales enablement and sales training and sales operations and everything else. So I'm a huge student of sales, and I've been teaching sales for about 15 years. So looking forward to bringing in some of those sales tactics, and been working with Tom for quite some time now on how we can kind of bring this to MSP. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Scott. And just a couple of housekeeping items as a reminder. We are recording today's session, and we will make sure we get this out along with the assets that we talk about today in a follow-up email. We'll also include a quiz, so we'd love to have any feedback about what you hear today and hopefully maybe what you look forward to on the future episodes of MSP Ignition. Also, we're definitely going to be doing some Q&A at the end, but if you have any questions as they come up throughout the program, please feel free to pop them into your GoToWebinar question box there, and we'll get to them as seamlessly as we can as we go through everything. We'll also go through some handouts that you've got there as well. We'll see those towards the end, but if you want to jump ahead, that's there, and you'll see those in your GoToWebinar as well. Before we get too terribly deep as it relates to what we're going to be dealing with sales, we do want to go over just a little bit about eFolder. We are obviously the IT channel's most powerful suite of data protection solutions, and we're going to talk about what that means. But we are a data protection company. We have a suite of solutions that we feel is unparalleled in the market. It really started many, many years ago with the original backup, and that's what the company was founded on. The gentleman who wrote the original code for that is now our CTO, and we've been growing ever since. This set the foundation for us to expand into other arenas with solutions like Anchor, File Sync, and Share, like Cloud Finder, cloud-to-cloud backup, and even on the BDR side with Replibit and Anchor. And what you see here is an evolution of a company that saw a change in the landscape, both on the technology and data side that MSPs and small to medium-sized businesses and even enterprises deal with, as well as the people side, where we had bring your own devices, mobility, and a lot of challenges coming from just how people are doing business today. So we saw these solutions as something that brought everything together, provided the suite that really provides data protection at multiple layers. I mentioned Anchor, File Sync, and Share. It's so much more. It's a collaborative tool. It's a productivity tool, but it also has instant malware insurance baked into it. Cloud Finder is an ability to not only provide the ability to have margin on those Office 365 licenses that you're selling, but also really have a retention policy that goes beyond what Microsoft gives you. With Replibit, it's a chain-free, the market's only chain-free technology in BDR that provides the ability for you to manage your devices and your networks in a much more efficient fashion. And then with with Axient, forgive me. Axient is our most recent addition to the suite of solutions, and it came into the family back in July of last year, and we're still working on integrating our companies and the solutions, and at some point down the road, we hope to have Replibit and BRC, which is the Axient solution, as one. But what you can see here is that the real key difference between the BRC with Axient and Replibit is the virtualization, where Replibit brings a very nice appliance-based on-site perspective. What Axient does is give you the one-click availability to virtualize in the cloud, no matter all those different points that you're seeing here on this particular diagram. something that's very easily virtualized and very easy to get your clients back up and running in instances where you need that very high level of business continuity. But I digress. Let's dive into the most important part here, and that's really about MSP Ignition. Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you for a bit to kind of talk to us about this for those people who are new to MSP Ignition, about what we're talking about here and the program in general, if you will.
Yes, so thank you, Robert. And MSP Ignition is a program that is the brainchild of Matt Nacktrub, our CEO, and he came onto eFolder last year, and he decided he wanted to give something back to MSP owners, a type of training education series where MSP owners can get the information to grow their businesses. And he and Adam Slutskin, our CRO, gave me a call and asked if I would like to come out of somewhat retirement and join the team and lead a program where we just enabled our partners and anyone, as a matter of fact, even if you're not our partner, and taught you how to be better business people, how to make more money. So what we're doing is twice a month, we're doing webinars. And as a part of that, we do one webinar is MSP Ignition, and we pick a topic. And we will have one coming up in March. And then we have a second webinar that I'm doing with Scott Kaplan, and that is going to be sales enablement. And that's the one we're doing today. And all we're here to do is help you improve your business. I ask you, if you have any questions, please chime in during this. If you have any questions after, please feel free to email me directly.
Awesome.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you very much, Tom. And speaking of Scott Kaplan, Scott, we'll pass the mic to you, sir, and maybe give us a little bit of rundown of what we're going to be talking about today.
Sure. So, for those who have seen some of the MSP ignitions that we've been working on, what we really want to do is take you through some real tactical items of how you can go out there and grow your business. So I know I wasn't on the last one, but helped work on the back end with Robert and Tom on things like, elevator pitches and how do we really kind of go to market. And today what we really want to do is focus on ways you can really grow your business and really what's involved with growing your business. And so you can see, from the slides here, a couple different things that we'll really kind of specifically talk about and kind of go from there, from things like referrals and the networking events and social selling techniques and promotions. But what we're not going to do is just talk about this in the sense of just theory. We want to get really practical and tactical. You should be able to leave every one of these MSP Ignition sales trainings with something that you or your team can do effectively and different tomorrow, your next conversation. And we definitely want your feedback. I know we'll send things like surveys out and those types of things, but we want to make sure it's really the value for you. And so this is some of the feedback that you've given us thus far of how do I leverage referrals? How do I do promotions? Okay, what really is social selling? And so we want to answer some of those types of questions for you today and put it in the context of really how do you grow your business and make sure it's really a tangible takeaway that you guys can go out there and leverage. So we want to give you the options that work specifically for you in a manner that you can effectively use tomorrow to grow your business in the manner that you see fit, but also give you the ideas of how you might want to set the stage to grow your business in the future. Things that might take a little more time or preparation or development with your overall business and team. So we'll kind of take that and kind of go from there. And to start it off, I was hoping we could start off with a little polling question for you guys. So we're going to ask you guys to get in your screens and kind of go from there. And Robert, you can probably tell them the specifics of it. But we wanted to start off with a quick polling question for all of you guys.
Yeah, and thanks so much, Scott. And so, as you mentioned, we want people to walk away from today's session, as everyone, with actual tangible benefits that they can put into place. But at the same time, we want to know kind of what people are out there doing. Yep. So we are asking right now about what tactics from the list you see do you use the most in your daily business life?
Okay, so that's up there. You guys should see a few different options. So go ahead and put your items in. Is it cold calling? Is it referrals? I know you might use a few of these, but maybe think about the one you use most. Networking, solutions, social selling, the promotions aspect. So we'll give a couple more seconds.
As things are coming in, it looks like referrals are going to be the far and away leader on this, and probably not surprising. When I'm out talking with partners on the phone or out in the field at events, one of the things I always hear when it comes down to sales and marketing is I rely on referrals, and sometimes 100% of the business. So for you out there that are clicking that, you're definitely not alone. And even though it's something you're using primarily today, we're going to hopefully give you some tips and tricks to maybe even enhance that moving forward. So we're going to close this one. And, while we obviously wanted to understand what you're using the most, we do want to understand at the same time what you're using the least. So we know that referrals, again, it's something that I think we've heard a lot in the IT services landscape. And so if you would please take a look at your screen and let us know what you're using the least. And maybe that's you just don't find it needed. Maybe you're just a little uncomfortable in that. But if it's that latter, we might be able to help you a little bit.
Yep. So we'll give you guys a couple of seconds to do that, so we know that referrals. And no one here wanted to take about. We knew referrals was going to be the one that you guys use the most, just because we knew.
And that's going to be a big focus.
Yeah, it'll be a big focus today. So we'll talk about ways to enhance that and how to drive that. But we definitely want to see also things that you might be using the least. And we think we know what the answer is here, but we don't want to spoil it. We'll give you what our
yeah, we'll let you know. It's a little surprising, I guess. Here right now, it looks like cold calling's coming in at the top least used spot.
Yeah.
Cold calling, promotions at number 2, and social selling is actually not towards the top. It's actually getting dwarfed. So good to hear that social selling is already being incorporated into the landscape of today. And again, even though if you're familiar with social selling, we hopefully you'll walk away a little later with some tips and tricks, maybe make you a better social seller. So we'll close this up. Again, it's pretty close. Actually, cold calling and promotions, it looks like those are the 2 that are used the least
Okay.
at this point.
Good to know. So thank you all for doing that. So we want to make sure we can hit those different types of items and kind of can continue to go from there. So what we want to do is we want to put this under the header of really the different types of relationships that there are. So I kind of bucketed in 3 kind of high level type of buckets if you can go out there and try to do. So the first one we'll kind of talk about is that hot relationship that you kind of have, right? So this is a current customer that's really referring you by name to a real qualified and interested buyer, right? So those are obviously the great relationships. They're really hot. You can leverage them a few different ways. And this is where we'd love to get a lot of our referrals from, and probably where you do. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We also have the warm ones, right? So not quite hot, but how do we leverage these types of warm relationships? And what I really try to focus people on when we think about warm relationships is how do we make those relationships really of value and really kind of get to that hot spectrum is really by providing customer success stories. So think about what have you helped firms, the customers that you have solve. How have you as an MSP helped grow their business, solidify their business, let that business have more capabilities, more profits, et cetera, the solutions that you provide as an MSP to your end customers, right? And so how do you leverage those in ways to give you validation, in the ways to give you specifics that you could reference, but also take that message and that story and really resonate it with your clients. And then unfortunately, we do have the cold relationships where you don't really have a lot of background and you have to drop, things like, hey, you have certain different industry ties or networking ties, local connection ties. And so we'll talk about all these different aspects, but really how do we kind of move up the spectrum in the sense of which one we hit, how we hit it, and kind of go from there. So unfortunately, I'm going to start with the cold and kind of go from there, right? But I want us to think about from a cold perspective. It's really as you're just starting to contact these customers and really what's involved with it and kind of going from there and driving it from there. So we have a few different things that we kind of can talk about. So obviously, when you're developing these cold relationships, you're going to use your company website, right? You're going to use whatever you can from get people to understand your generic and general profile of what you do, how you do it, the offices that you have, the solutions that you do, and even trying to get to the idea of different trends. And sometimes you put it on your company website, you might put it on your LinkedIn or your Twitter profile, and this is the starting of social selling. And so when I talk with not just MSPs, but when I talk with other businesses and they start doing social selling, a lot of times what they start to do is really just think about things like LinkedIn and just doing a company page or those types of things. But we'll talk about how we can get that to be more fluid and kind of go from there. And then the dreaded cold calling, which we knew was going to be the probably least favorite. We knew that one. If we were to take a bet, we knew referrals would be the one you guys use the most, and we probably would have taken the bet, to pick cold calling as one you guys use the least. But I want to reframe cold calling. It's not just the picking up the phone, but it's also when you're first meeting someone, whether it's face-to-face or over the phone, it's the idea of a new contact, right? And cold calling isn't just I have to pick up the phone and do something cold and I have no relationship with them. It's I have never met this person. And so I want to reframe what cold calling is, in the sense that you might go to one of your clients and there might be new people that are there, right? Maybe they've grown, maybe new people in different positions. And so as you're doing that, it's the idea of how do I develop that relationship from the very beginning. They don't know me, they don't know who I am. How do I develop that? That's a cold relationship. And so how do you leverage that and kind of build it out from there? And the one thing that, I also, and Tom and I were talking about this too, so I'll let him chime in here in a second, is what I call the 5-foot rule, right? And some people used to call it a 3-foot rule. I think I've expanded it a couple extra feet just to get more broader spectrum. But with people, when they are within a 5-foot radius of you, how do you get to know them, meet them, and really seek for opportunities? And we'll talk today about some real interesting, cool, easy to use tactics of how you can leverage that at networking events. I travel a lot, so I do it on airplanes quite a bit. I do it when I'm out to dinner by myself quite a bit, and I'm talking with different people here and there. And I kind of just have this idea of I never know who I might meet and where I might meet them. And so I always kind of keep an idea of that 5-foot rule of how I can go out there and engage in it. So that's kind of a idea of cold calling.
Awesome. Hey, Scott, you mentioned, these cold calling aspects. And Tom, I want to loop you in here a little bit. I think one of the benefits that you actually bring to this conversation as a former MSP owner, 15 years. What were some of the thoughts that you had about cold calling in this context, and maybe some of the unique thoughts maybe about in-person, outbound? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people that are on this call probably aren't out there banging phones. It's not common in the MSP world for a number of reasons. You can often go find a service that will do it for you, and that can work to some degree. But I actually did what I call like an old school cold call. So if I was in a building or had one of my salespeople in a building, or even technicians, what I would do is always have them with a packet. They would have multiple kind of branded pieces of collateral about my company in there, like a rack card, maybe like a flyer or two. And what I would do is, especially if I had a client in a building, I would look and see who else was in that building, and also ask my client who they knew in that building. It was maybe the right demographics for what I would look for a client. And I would just go knock on the door and introduce myself, usually to an office manager, someone like that, an owner if they're around, and hand them that packet and ask them if I could stop by and talk to them again, or ask them if they have any computer problems at that time. I'd actually picked up business doing that, where I would be out there and ask someone if they had a computer problem, and I would say, hey, you know what, I'm here, I got about half an hour, can I take a look at that? You can actually get business that easily on the fly, just wherever you are. But my feeling, like Scott's is that take your opportunity, whoever's in front of you, to present what you do and what kind of solution you can bring to them, and you'll be surprised by the answers you get.
Awesome.
So I think that's a great add there, Tom. You took the 5-foot rule, made it the door next door, the building next door, right? The office next door rule, and it's that just type of concept that you guys can really see kind of brought into action, right? So how many different buildings are you in where, who you can go out there and ask next door, above you, below you, and kind of drive it from there. So what we want to do is we want to go more in depth in some of these things. So the next thing we're going to do is really hit on social selling and kind of what is social selling and kind of how we can go out there and drive it. So to give a little bit of a definition, right, of kind of what I'm talking about to make sure we're on the same page and there's not different ideas floating around. Really, social selling is a way to leverage the different social media actions and platforms that are out there to interact with prospects and obviously customers, right, in a way to start to generate sales conversations. And keep in mind, I think everything is a sales conversation, right? Now, maybe not everyone here is a salesperson, quote unquote, in their mind, and I'm going to challenge that a little bit. I think everyone's a salesperson. Whether you have a commission plan or not, though, that might be different, and that's fair. But how everyone can go out there and really help promote what we do and how we do it, and what you promote from an MSP and the value that you provide, the customers that you help, the outreach that you have, that's something that everyone can really be doing at your organization. And I really would encourage you as an MSP to get everyone to really kind of go out there and do it. And so social selling is really invaluable, right? And it does a few different things. I mean, think about your own social network aspect. So we all have Facebook friends that like to post, the meal that they had last night at the local restaurant, because you got to to see what the steak looked like, or the chicken, or the fish, or whatever the case may be, right? And yes, I've done it before too, I'll admit it. But actually, we think about what that does, that humanizes it. It draws a connection, right? And it helps you being able to help drive the experience that you want people to go through. And that's really what we're getting to, right? So if you can think of yourself from a social perspective, right, and enabling yourself to be a thought leader, to be a solution provider, right, to really help position yourself and validate really who you are in the marketplace, right? And then the question that I really try to ask people is really, what's your brand, right? What do you want to go out there? And some people say, oh, I have a company profile. And they, like I said before, they kind of take it to that extreme, and that's where it stops. But really, what is your brand from a social selling perspective? And do you message that out? You have a lot of great data. What we do from an MSP perspective is awesome. The knowledge that you have from a technology perspective, how that helps provide solutions to the customers, and what you do and how you keep up to date with technology is great information. It's a great value add. That's why there's so many customers that you have and so much opportunity for your growth. So get that information out. Talk to people about it, and really help build your different type of brand and kind of go from there. So there's 4 elements that I want to make sure that we can start to get to in terms of social selling. So like I said, the first one's really establishing your brand, right? So how you can become a thought leader, how you can post different pieces of information. It doesn't have to be long, drawn out, detailed information. It can be quick snippets, it can be success stories, it can be even sharing of other people's ideas. And what that really helps you go out there and do is really find the right type of people, right? So you can identify the prospects of really what you're trying to go out there and leverage. And again, these are not just prospects within, the idea of they are not current customers today, but also even within your current customer base, how do you get to know more people and leverage people within that current customer base? So if someone moves, you don't lose the account from somebody else. If someone goes from one company to another company because you're so involved with that company, it gives you more opportunities. There's lots of ways of not just finding people out there and trying to hunt for different people, but how do you leverage that network to see where they move and how you can kind of continue those different dynamics. And the thing that I have found to be very valuable when people do social selling, and it doesn't take a lot of time, it just takes a conscious effort, i.e. every Friday or every Wednesday, put a 15-minute calendar reminder to go out there and post something on your LinkedIn profile or tweet something out or something along those lines. Share an article, share a piece of news, share a customer success story. And we've given you some ideas of really to engage. And I want you to think about engaging with insights. Think of value. Think of what an insight could be to what would be of value to the customer, what would be of importance. How can you go out there and get them to think about something that they haven't thought about before, something that they forgot, or even how do they think about something new? And ultimately, what it allows you to do is really build your relationships and strengthen your network by establishing yourself as a market leader, as a thought leader, and as the kind of person to go to as the right type of expertise, and kind of go from there.
Hey, Scott, we had a question come in from Frank, and he was asking, are you saying, like, based on number 2 and some of these other things, are you saying that just connecting with multiple people at your clients is social selling?
Thanks, Frank. Good question. Yeah, it's part of it, right? So that's part of what we go out there and do. There's multiple layers that are there and associated with it. So how you can continue to not just connect with the people, but also keep the relationships that were there. And as we start talking about how you build upon those relationships, right? So right now I'm kind of walking you through evolution steps, right? So this is the quote unquote cold step that I talked to, but think about as you get kind of more warm and you start to develop those things out. We'll talk a little bit later today of how you continue to evolve that. But yeah, that's definitely the start of it. It can kind of drive it from there.
And I might add, Scott, I think the key there is the fact that, to your point, if someone moves on, you've got a network at your clients at this point, not just the main person you're dealing with or the person signing the contracts. And so you've got your kind of tentacles across their organization. And then most importantly, when you're sharing that content, that's when the social selling really happens, that number 3 and number 4 steps, right? Where you're not just connecting, but you're actually out there being proactive, sharing articles, writing thought leadership, or just being active in this area where they're seeing you be active.
Yeah, and there's something that I've also just, I'll say it before, I'll say it again, the little bit of how we've helped the customer, right, and what we went out there and do, 2-3 sentences. People forget to celebrate their successes, and your customers want to hear that. They want to hear how you help, because a lot of it's a me too situation, right? And that helps develop it out from there too. And we'll talk a little bit about that today too. But great questions, guys. Thank you. Keep those coming in to Robert on the line as well, and kind of grab from there. Okay. So I just want to kind of bring up a couple of different things from LinkedIn perspective. I have a lot of connections over at LinkedIn and have used social selling and taught on the topic a few different times. But I like this from the idea of, just want to give you guys a couple different stats. So 45% is saying that social selling leaders create a lot more opportunities than people who don't. And I can give you a couple more stats, Robert. We can bring up the next 2 stats here, right? It's pretty much saying they're 50% are more likely to hit quota, right? And pretty much 78% is saying they outsell people who don't use social media. And so the idea being, I think everyone's a salesperson. And like I said before, just as a difference, do you have a compensation plan or not? But I think it's everyone's job to go out there and really communicate what we do and how we go out there and do it. And if you get your teams to be familiar with it and you go out there to market, all this slide is telling you, it's not going to hurt you. It's just going to give you a lot more opportunity. And the data shows it. And if you don't know a lot about LinkedIn data, man, do they know a lot about what we do and how we do it, and be able to go out there and do social selling scores and everything else. And I won't bore you on that whole topic, but there's a lot of good information. I just kind of wanted to go out there and ground you with that. I also wanted to arm you with what it means to go out there and socially sell. And so you kind of have this one bucket of, okay, here's who I am. And this is probably a majority of us out there. Here's my resume, if you will. Here's the different places that I've been. Here's my accomplishments. Here's my abilities. Here's all the different things. And it kind of speaks a little bit about it. Versus when we talk about social selling, it's really the value to the customer. How do you take your experiences and say, this is the value that we can go out there and provide, right? So as an MSP in certain geographic region, or if you're focusing in certain verticals, how do you bring those things up? What's the value that you provide? How do you go out there and help others? Is there certain types of businesses that you help in terms of size, in terms of industry, in terms of verticals, certain problems that you help them solve? And providing your abilities through that is really good. And by default, the job history is always there. And those different items are there. But really take a second, and if I could recommend like an action item for you, go out there and look at your LinkedIn profile. Is it a resume? Or are you showing the value to the customer so someone who reads it can say, hey, I can go out there and this is really important to me?
All right, so Scott, that's great. I think it was a great overview on cold leads. So let's transition to the topic of warm leads now.
Yeah, so warm leads are the way, okay, so I got this cold aspect going, right? How do I really try to continue to develop it out? And like I told you, it's really about customer success stories. And so it's really a key idea is to think about and take what I started saying on the cold and really bring it out a little bit more. How do I express the solutions that I provide? So think about an issue that one of your clients had. Think about how you solved that issue. What was really involved with it? What were some of the details, some of the specifics, right? And think about not just how I solved it, but what was the impact to that client? What can they do now in terms of the business needs, the business process, the scale that they can go out there and do? Think about the value of what it meant to the client and what they can kind of go out there and do now. And then how do you tie that into a great little story? So hopefully my graphic here is something that you guys can kind of chuckle along with, but hopefully it resonates. You want to be able to put that into a story and be able to have some degrees of communicating that in a fluid way. And when you tell a story, people can believe, it gives more the believability aspect. It gets into, okay, people can connect with it. They can understand it. It also lets you have your emotion behind it and your passion for what you do and how you go out there and do it. And that builds trust. Also is kind of a confidence builder for yourself as the sayer of it, to be able to have that story that you can kind of go out there and communicate. But it puts it into practical terms for the listener, right? And it helps break down those walls and those barriers so that the intent of developing the warm referrals is really being able to communicate the value and have someone believe you so they want to trust you. Once they trust you, then they're going forward with you as a client. but they're thinking, okay, before they buy, people are evaluating the investment that they're going to make. Not just the dollar investment, the time investment, the resource investment, the idea of the unknown with you and that risk factor, right? And so these types of customer success stories help alleviate those types of things proactively and make it more fluid. And let's think about kind of when you do it and kind of go from there. So I was talking with Tom about this, and I know that networking events are great. Great way to get the kind of those warm leads and kind of those different types of connections. And so I know, Tom, there's lots of different things we were talking about in terms of how do you take those stories and where would you leverage them and how would you leverage them? We were talking a lot about networking events. Do you want to kind of chime in?
Yeah, absolutely. Networking events is, I think, probably the most effective way to build an MSP, because most of you out there are building them in a local region, maybe 50 miles around you in any way. And the way you're going to meet those people, those business people, is either through networking or through referrals, or a combination thereof. And the first thing is, and Scott's put up here very well, says local, local, local. That's my big thing too. Avoid events that have like the companies that are coming into town, creating a networking event, something like that. You're better off going to ones that are going to be local groups that repeatedly meet throughout the month, have some sort of cadence to that effect, and where you can run into the same people over and over again. That's important. One of them is business groups. So something to do with, if there's even an MSP one area, there are some of those out there, or you'll have ones for a particular industry, for technology, or, you know, if you can get into one that's like a legal group and be the only person in there who does computer work and all the rest of the people do legal, things like that. Boards and commissions are very good. Serve on boards. I will tell you, even serving on like a homeowners association board, those are often going to be run by people that are business people in many cases. You'll pick up business from that. Commissions, town commissions, government commissions, things like that will also get your name out there in the papers. Those are important. Entrepreneur events, attend or create. That is important. Other entrepreneurs are going to understand what you're doing and be able to take your message to other places for you. And we're going to get in the next slide, we're going to get even more specifics about this. But basically, anything with a group that has a similar interest to you, or especially groups of people, business owners who are going to understand what you do and need your services. Put yourself in front of the right people. I tried to make sure my salespeople always were picking the right events, and I would often nix certain events they wanted to go to, because I would say, I don't really see how you're going to be coming across the right people. I'd rather you go to this. And we're going to get more specific on the next slide, because I'm going to talk to you about ones I actually used. I served on Chamber of Commerce for years. One interesting thing about Chambers of Commerce is don't view it as just your Chamber of Commerce in your direct town or county or whatever. Look at the ones around you. You don't have to live in that particular work, have a business in that particular community in most cases to serve on other Chambers of Commerce or go to their events. And so I was usually part of 3 Chamber of Commerces at any one time, and that worked out very well. And I always served on the technology and marketing board within it. And so that got my name out there, and I was involved in a lot of events. Serving local government, that will get your name out there. And other people who serve on local government are often, that are serving and are elected or appointed, they are often going to be business people who understand what you're doing. I started my own happy hour years ago. And I did it at like a real nice restaurant bar once a month. I think I did the second Tuesday of each month, the second Thursday of each month. And I spent anywhere from $50 to $80. I'd have 3 or 4 people show up, and I'd buy them drinks and a couple appetizers. And I'll tell you what, I mean, easily over 7 figures in business came in from running that happy hour for a couple of years. And I spent just a tiny amount to do it, and it was fun. Having your own event will put your name right up at the top. You can email everyone, and that has another level of networking to it, because you're getting traction and you're getting your brand out there before they even show up. Even if they don't show up, it has effectiveness. I even had business where someone I was emailing and always said he wanted to come to my events, never did, but he sent me business anyways. So it has a power even outside of the actual event. Meetup.com worked great for me. Going to ones that are other technology companies or business-related meetup groups. And then Kauffman Foundation is it's a nonprofit out of Missouri, and they Kansas City, Missouri, and they actually have a couple $2 billion under funds that they use just to promote entrepreneurship and nonprofits. And they have all kinds of groups, like 1 Million Cups. We even have one here in Denver, I checked, and they put a couple of entrepreneurs up front every month and they pitch. You can get involved in those groups and manage them, and that really gets your name in front of people. And then we have religious organizations. I mean, serve on boards and within religious organizations, go to their events, go to their networking. You know, if you go to church, stay after, talk to people. Those are places you can network and effectively get business.
Hey, Tom, Phyllis has chimed in with a question relating to BNI. Maybe not familiar with that organization. Can you add just a little bit? Is that something that is fairly common in most across the country?
I'm glad you said that. I skipped over that. So BNI is Business Network International. A lot of people probably know it. They can be a bit painful to go to. I went to them years ago, and I finally just assigned someone. I had a salesperson go to 2 ones in 2 different areas, and you go every week, and it's either breakfast or lunch, and then you are with the same people every week pitching your business, and then you have to coordinate and do other things with those people too, but it gets your message so people really understand. And we all probably know out there, managed service provider businesses, because the name is not great. And on top of that, if you've never had to hire one, it's kind of hard to understand exactly what we do until you're on board somewhere. But when you have a networking group where you are assigned to the same group of people, you see them every week, you communicate with them, you can educate them and make them really understand what you do, and they become an extension of your sales team. So I always have my salespeople attend 1 to 2 different BNI groups that we paid membership for every week, and it was incredibly effective at driving business.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. So I think we've covered a really nice spectrum of the warm leads as it's kind of progressed now from the cold leads. But I think what we're obviously probably most people on this call are interested in is how to find the most hot leads. So, Scott, I'll turn the microphone back to you to get us started on that topic.
Yeah, so again, just kind of recap. So for every aspect that we've gone through, the cold aspects, we wanted to give you some tactical things to do with the social selling, with the warm, how to create the story, and then where to use it at networking. And obviously for hot, we wanted to make sure we can kind of go through that, right? But the caution, these leads may be hot, so handle with care. You want to make sure you do it the right way. So let's just kind of really just define really what a hot lead is. It's a direct referral from a client, right? So that's a trusted source to a prospective client, right? And think about that. Once a trusted source introduces you, right, it eliminates so many of the initial barriers that you have. That's why they're so great. That's why we try to leverage referrals. That's why it's the obvious answer that you guys are saying. This is what we use most. You know, because they've used you in the past and they went to a different company. Great, that's obvious. That's great. And so they're familiar with the problems that you solve, and they have that credibility, and kind of go from there. Okay, great. So we have those, but then the question is, how do we use these, right? And some different ways to go out there and drive it. And so they're great for obviously the introductions, but I want to make sure you guys can get more. Knowing that you are obviously go out there and use that and leverage it, how can you go out there and try to drive it? So one tactic that I have put into hundreds, if not thousands, of salespeople's minds over the years is after you make a sale, whatever the appropriate time frame is for you to make sure that you've validated, you've solved their needs and the reason that they've signed up. So whether it's a week, a month, and this I'm saying maybe 3 months after sign up, right? How do you go back to them and say, hey, can you give me 3 additional contacts? And obviously, you're going to want to position it the correct way. Hey, I do a lot of my business on referrals. I want to take the same value I provided you. Can you think of anyone in your network that has the same needs and same problems that you could kind of give me a direct referral to? So that's kind of the idea of the talk path, right? But I say ask for 3. A lot of people tend to say, hey, do you have anyone? I'd like to add 3 for a few different reasons. 1, 3 is better than 1. 2, if I've done a good job and I've helped someone, and I believe that my role as a salesperson is provide value for my customer and then implement that value. And if that's something that I've done, I can confidently go and ask for more than kind of 1 thing. But if I've done that and I ask for 3 and they only give me 1, they might feel a little guilty. So it gives me to kind of do kind of sub bullets 2 and 3 there of really ask for an introduction, maybe not just a direct referral, but maybe through LinkedIn, but also give me a testimonial. And there's lots of places you will want to post different testimonials, which are also a great reference or referral. And it's a different definition of referral, but what it really is, it is showing the valuable solution that you provide to a problem. And you can put that on your website or Google or LinkedIn or Yelp. And then we put the et cetera, but we think those are probably the top 4. But what you do on Google might not always transfer to LinkedIn. And maybe you don't want someone to do it on both. But maybe if they only gave you 1 direct referral, they say, oh, I don't mind doing it on Google and Yelp or LinkedIn or. But the way that you go out there and really drive this is to say, have a pattern. I know after I close a sale or implement this customer, the time frame is, put it on your calendar so you don't forget about it. I used to make jokes with my sales peers and my sales teams when I manage them of going out there and really signing it up, because if I just put it on my calendar, it's easy to remember, right? And then you just kind of continue that process to go from there. And then different ways of how you can leverage those introductions. It's not just a direct email or face-to-face at maybe a networking event, but leveraging through the different LinkedIn and social media aspects. And then also, again, the websites and the Googles and the LinkedIns and Yelps of the world are great testimonials that we really want to go out there and add. And that's how you can really kind of start to leverage those hot referrals. The other way that we were really starting to talk about was really leveraging the promotions, right? And a way to go to your current customer base and develop referrals is through promotions. And so one of the questions that we asked earlier on the polling question was, which one do you guys use least? And this is one of them that popped up the least. And so there's actually some great things that we were able to go out there and do. And so Tom and I were kind of putting our heads together on what are the different types of promotions. And he and I have had some great banter, and it kind of sparked a lot of different types of discussion. I don't want to steal your thunder, Tom, but why don't maybe walk through some of the promotions that you did? And then I know you've also given some great examples that people can download and use for themselves too. So hopefully you guys will get some good stuff from Tom here.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, one of the things that I really talk about is I ran what I call a 100% managed services program. So everyone was on some kind of agreement. Everyone was either on a managed service agreement that was monthly or in multi-year, or they were on prepaid hours. So one of the things I like to do especially when I switch people over is like, give them something to do this or to buy more hours at once, is give them a few free on prepaid hours. You have their money up front. That's the important thing. And then, things just basically spend more money, receive great. If you have a system and they're a point system, you can say to people, the more you buy from us, so if they're buying, $2,000, $3,000 worth of goods and services per month, you can tell them that you're going to give them something like a credit back, like a few percent back, once they are over a certain threshold of what they're getting from you in terms of services, but also hardware and that kind of thing. So they feel like they get a return back on something when they do more business with you. I also, one of my favorite ones to do, when I could identify very well-heeled clients, I particularly did this targeted law firms, lobbying firms, people like that had a lot, usually had enough capital to do it. I would go to them and say, listen, we're doing a multi-year agreement, but if you give me all the money up front for the first year, then I'll give you, I'll take a month's credit off of that. I have all that money up front. I could do a lot with that up front. And we'll get to that in next month's webinar, where we're going to talk about money now is worth more than money later. And this one I'm really excited about. Referral programs, we're going to get to that next. But also new offerings or services. When you add on, you're doing phone services now, or you add on a new way to back up things, you need to let people know you have that out there, because they might want it. And I always tell people, make flyers up for these things. Have your technicians dropping them off. Have your, have them at the bottom of invoices, the information about what you're offering. Make sure that your clientele there are getting this information, because we know the cost of adding a new client is far higher than just getting more business out of an existing client. And so you always want to maximize the amount of business you're getting out of that client. But a lot of times, if they don't know you're offering these things because they signed up 3 years ago, you got to make them aware that you've added services. Put it in front of them somehow. So, yeah, as I mentioned, putting it on invoices, give it to text, how they go on site. I'm a big believer in rack cards. And a rack card is just a third of a page instead of a trifold brochure. It's 1/3 front and back. I find trifolds are overwhelming too much. My goal with like a rack card is all I want people to do is pick up the phone and call me. I don't need to give them all the information. I need just enough that they do that. They call or email, and preferably call. And I did really well with rack cards and also postcards. They just handed out, or I sometimes would have mailings done. Same thing. And those are very effective. And on those cards, whenever you do them, try to have some kind of promotion you're doing, or have some kind of sticker you can overlay on that to get someone some extra reason to call you. There's like a dated promotion.
Tom, I'm going to chime in a second, just to your point a moment ago, just kind of tying this slide together. the key is that you need to have the strategies and tactics in place, but also figure out a way to make sure that your clients are aware of what's going on, right? Because you mentioned you may be starting and selling new services, but if they don't know, it's kind of hard for them to purchase. So whether it's on invoices, whether it's in your maybe monthly newsletters, maybe it's doing your quarterly meetings with those clients, make sure that you really keep everything on the agenda that is beneficial both to their business and to yours.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. And I mentioned earlier, let's say you've had a client for 6-7 years and they're on a contract that just rolls over. They may have no idea. So I'd like anyone out there to think about, who do you have out there that you've had for a long time as a client that maybe doesn't know that you added some new services, like the ability to back up their laptops, that kind of thing. And something little where you can get them interested. They may want to buy that from you.
Cool. Yeah, and so thank you very much for that. So, and kind of, I know something that's next on the agenda, something that's very close to your heart and maybe to your wallet as well. But can you tell us a little bit about the referral programs from your perspective?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. We're actually going to show you the referral program that I use very effectively. So I went back and forth on referral programs for years and did not have effective ones. And I figured out finally the reason was everyone's got a referral program and everyone's willing to give whoever a $50 Starbucks card. And so they didn't have any traction. People didn't remember it. And I needed to put something in front of people where they remember it. And I came up with a few principles. And one was cash payout. I mean, literally like $100 bills, and then big money. Make it so they really think about this and they go hunt for you. They become an extension of your sales team. And I would also market this to my existing clients in many different ways. Flyers, invoices, on invoices, email signatures, word of mouth. But I also have one more rule I have in here, is cover yourself. If you give someone money in a referral program and it's big money, make sure you get 1099, because otherwise we know what the tax implications are on that. So I make sure if you're doing these things, you cover yourself in multiple ways, and I'll go into that further on the next slide, because not only should you cover yourself 1099, you also cover yourself, don't pay out money until you've gotten that money from the new client that you referred. So this is the actual flyer I used in my business and I got a lot of clients out of this. And as you see, this was a big jump for me. I went from the $50 gift cards to, I gave people up to $1,000 cash. So the first one you see is, if I got a new monthly managed service agreement for $700 to $1,900 a month, I gave them $500 cash. If it was $2,000 or more, I gave them $1,000 cash. Now, the fine print below, I only paid this money out after the second full month of service. And I know this, and so at that point, I would show up with an envelope and a 1099, and people were ecstatic, because these were often office managers, receptionists, people, bookkeepers. These are people, and this was a lot of money. And I'll tell you what, those people often would get 2 or 3 of these with me a year, because it really worked. But I protected myself, and I know this seems like a lot of money to people out there, but if you have done a $2,000 agreement and you have 2 or 3 years on that, you're getting paid. If you're at 30, 40, 50% profit on that, this is a drop in the bucket for new business that you might not otherwise have had. And we also have, we've made 2, so what we're going to have, we have the version you just saw before, which is a Microsoft Word version that I use back in my business, and we are making that available for download following the webinar. You're more than welcome to use that, customize it as you like. And we've also, our internal marketing team here has made this version too, which is a PDF version, and is customizable with logo and all the language you see in there as well. So you have 2 different versions to use it. Guys, please feel free to do it. Change the amounts if you have to, but I will tell you, $500 and $1,000 cash, speak to people. They will remember you, and they will send you business, and you will be way beyond other people's programs. There's also one added nice piece of this. This increases the credibility of your business. If people know that you can pay out that much money, they know you're solid. They know you know what you're doing and that you're all about business, and they'll perceive you as really legitimate, and they will talk about that with people, that you are willing also to pay back to people who bring you business. And you will extend your sales team with a program like this to everyone that's a client of yours. And here's an example of one of the ways I mentioned when you're marketing promotions, or in this case, the referral program. So we just have like an invoice right here. And what it's showing is, at the bottom, I put in the comments of the same language that you saw on the previous flyers. The reason I've done this is, most of your clients out there are going to be small businesses. they are using bookkeepers, bookkeeping services, and those people are working at other businesses. That's the person you want to put this in front of, because they have the ability to identify who would be a good client for you, because they know what services they're being paid for, and they have the ability then to send you new business, and they definitely understand money. So I would do things like this. Or if I had a new kind of PC or laptop out, I might put a promotion in there, or the prepaid hours. Did you know if you bought 40 hours, you would get 5 free? And that client is only buying 10 at a time, may do that because they get a little value and they have the cash. But don't be afraid to use that comment section on your invoice and market. You can market these things all the time in many ways. I think that's something that Scott and I have gotten across pretty well here, is that don't limit yourself to do it. You don't have to dive in too deep to any one, but put your information out in a lot of places and make sure it's seen.
You know, Scott, we got a question in from Mark that was saying, I think you touched on part of it with the billing services, but Mark is wondering who are good targets to communicate your referral program to? Are we talking business owners?
Oh, well, I actually target referral programs mainly to administrative staff at my clients, but also someone one time thought, yes, the bookkeepers, office managers,
the people who are there at the front door when
who often go to different jobs. They move around more. The owners, they can send you business. You don't really usually have to pay them to send you business. The owners will usually want to send you business, and that's a whole different group of people. But interestingly enough, about a year into this program, someone got a hold of my flyer who wasn't at one of my clients. And they asked if they could send me business because they had someone. And I extended it. At that point, I just opened it up. I said, yeah, I'll pay you the money.
And, you know, I think one other thing that I want to add, because we point out, you made quite a bit of pomp and circumstance when you were going for those payouts, correct? I mean, you would show up, and how would you present the people with that referral?
Yeah, we kind of do a thing about it. We'd come in. Usually I'd go with my salesperson, and we would go in, and we'd have an envelope. And we'd count out the $100 bills. And have them sign, you know, the tax form, and also have them sign something else saying they received it.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal. People really liked it. This paid people's Christmas money. I mean, it gave them vacations.
I think to your point, when you first started talking about this, you considered $500, $1,000 a big dollar amount to the audience listening to us today. But as business owners, it's a big dollar amount. But to those people who are receiving it and getting $500, $1,000 hits at a time, it's a really big deal. If they can find a nice way to kind of keep that coming at a fairly consistent way, I would imagine.
And they will talk really good things about you after that too.
Yeah. And I think that's it. Yep. So we've got one additional polling question. You know, we started off with what you're using the most out there, with what you're using the least out there. At this point, we've gone through a lot of information, but we're curious as it relates to everything that you've learned today. If you could share with us, you know, what does it think that stands out to you, either from an effectiveness, something that you can turn around quickly, but we would love to know what you're going to take away from today's content and try to put into effect at least as close to immediate as possible. So we'll give you a few moments. Love to get your feedback on that. We'll definitely keep you as things are coming in. But, you know, Tom, we've talked about a lot how MSPs can apply this to today. As we're getting these feedback, any final thoughts?
Just one thing. I just wanted to go over real quick. Maybe we can go over this at the end. But my big thing is that don't limit yourself. I've talked to a lot of people out there, and they're doing one or two of these things, and I say you got to do a combination of them. You need to have a promotion here and there, and show that you're running your business with some kind of energy and making changes and adding things. You need to do some social networking. You need to be on LinkedIn. You need to push that. You need to make sure your newest accomplishments are up to date. You need to have things like a referral program. It doesn't have to be the one I have, but I do think it's important. People will recognize it, and they will remember you, and they will send you business. So grab little pieces of this, but make sure you're not doing any of them or just one or two. Make sure you're expanding your business in every way and your visibility and branding.
And I think that's a really nice way for us to kind of go into
what were some of the
oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. I got so excited about Sun Tzu here. No, our feedback is, I'm actually feeling really good, where we was, you know, pretty heavily allocated on the answers in our first two questions. Those things that people are going to take away today or tomorrow and start putting into play, it's almost evenly distributed across referrals, networking, social selling, and promotions. 34, 18, 24, and 24% respectively. So
So I guess the good news is, and what Tom said is, there's little bits that you all took from it of what you'll go out there and do. I know we only gave you the option to vote once too, but I think a lot of you might actually probably would have voted for a few different items. So hopefully the downloads and the other tactics we talked about were some good things for all of you. Good, glad to hear it.
And we are almost to the top of the hour. I think we've addressed most of the questions as they come in. We did get one question in from Travis, who was curious about the social selling effectiveness of Twitter.
Yeah, so I mean, Twitter is a great avenue in terms of a quick snippet. I've seen from a social selling good kind of customer success stories, or also good challenging thoughts and questions that people can then kind of start a trend on. A lot of people will connect their Twitter to LinkedIn too, so by doing one, it feeds to the other. And so I've seen those couple of tactics work pretty well from a social selling perspective. Just got to think about the mechanism of how Twitter works. It's small amounts of characters and what you're trying to go out there and do. But the intent being, how do I convince a store that gets them to say, oh yeah, me too, so they drive action? Or how do you get them to respond, which is a different type of action? But try to think, what can I do that emotionally connects a reader to take an action? And if you have that mindset, it can be very, very effective as well.
Thank you, Scott. And just as we continue to talk about this for a moment, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and pop them into your question box there from your GoToWebinar platform. One thing I'll add on the Twitter, it's an interesting way where you talk about some limited characters. It's a little different perspective. And I would say that for all social platforms, you should really think about the platform itself, whether it's Twitter, whether it's LinkedIn, even Facebook, etc. Really think about what that platform is, what does it offer to you, and how can you leverage that specifically in unique ways. You don't want to put the same type of content across every single one of your platforms. It becomes monotonous to those people who are following you across the way. And it also probably appeals a little differently. So those little snippets of, I liked your thought, Scott, about the challenging questions. As a small to medium-sized business owner, as an MSP, what can an MSP challenge a business owner really think about critically around, their technology and things of that nature? So it's a really unique way, but I think all platforms provide something. We are getting close to the top of the hour. I don't think we're having any additional questions come in. I hope that's a good sign, along with our equal distribution on what people are going to move forward with tomorrow in action. But also, I think we've covered a lot of it already. So, Scott, any parting thoughts from you before we close up shop today?
No, I think what we'll do is we'll send out a survey, right, which will just kind of give us some feedback, and we'll also make sure that we continue to address the items that you want. On the session we had this time last month, you guys kind of gave us a ranking order, and so we'll talk about some future sessions here coming up the end of March.
Wonderful. Tom, anything from you, sir?
Yeah, Robert, I just wanted to say thank you everyone for attending this, and I'm having a great time doing these webinars. Please feel free to reach out to me. We always want to hear about topics you're particularly interested in, and we'll get on those. We're always looking for partners who want to be on webinars too, and for particular things about how they've used certain tools or certain capabilities to grow their business. And I do want to quickly mention our next webinar is going to be about money now is worth more than money later, and this is where I explain how I shifted my business in 2008, 2009, and transferred to all managed services and made sure I got paid up front by clients. And I'm going to teach you how the effective ways to do that and why you need to do that for your business.
Awesome, and thank you very much for that, Tom. And as a reminder as well, from my perspective, keep an eye out for notes from folks from my team. Will be sending out follow-up on this episode with the ability to download the content from this, the flyers that we looked at that you could download through GoToWebinar. We'll make sure you get the pages, you can get that directly. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us directly, whether that's about Ignition or eFold or Axient specific solutions. We're always here to welcome those type of inquiries. And again, please keep an eye out for for information on the next episode of MSP Ignition. This is something that we're going to be taking through 2018 and ideally beyond. As you can hear today, we've been focusing very much on sales enablement, and to Tom's point, we'll be shifting back to MSP best practices for the next iteration here in just a couple of weeks. So for everyone on the call, thank you again very much for your time today. We definitely appreciate you joining us and look forward to talking to you next time.